Hello! Before we jump in, I'm making another broken Pokemon video where I'm challenging you to create the most absurd Pokemon you can think of. Check out the Google form in the description to submit your crazy idea. You can do it before or after watching this video, so long as you watch this video. Don't make me ground you. Gym leaders are at the forefront of type specialty in the Pokemon games and are the primary challenges trainers have to face to progress in their journey. The only problem is, they aren't often great at showcasing their type, and they aren't often that challenging, even when you get into some of their higher level teams. Because of this, I've decided to embark on a journey to craft the perfect gym leader for every type in the game. I've been going type by type to build a full team of 6 Pokemon, with thought out movesets, abilities, items, and most importantly, an emphasis on representing that type as best as possible. Each type has certain traits that make it unique, and this series aims to both highlight those traits and utilize them to craft a high-level gym leader team. In the last video we covered the dark type, and today we're high horsepowering our way through to the next type, ground. But first, this team has no legendaries, no mythicals, no ultra beasts, no paradox Pokemon, and no generational gimmicks. Plus, if it's been on a team already, it can't be on this one. But the Pokemon on this team can have all their moves, any ability, and any held item. Lastly, the 2 goals at hand are to build a diverse and well-balanced monotype team, and to build a team that represents its type as best as possible. Odds are you've seen the other 13 videos in this series, so I decided to speed it up this time. And if you do happen to be new here, well hey, thanks for dropping by. But you've got some catching up to do first. Anyways, without further ado, let's talk about the ground type. Like Atlas carrying the world on his shoulders, the ground type carries a lot of importance in the balance of Pokemon. On paper, it's arguably one of the best offensive types in the game. It's one of only 2 types, fighting being the other one, that hits 5 others for super effective damage. Those being electric, fire, poison, rock, and steel. And what a 5 types to hit at that. Electric is only weak to ground, fire is amazingly offensively and defensively, poison is a solid defensive type with only 2 weaknesses, rock is pretty good I guess. And steel is one of the best types in the game, period. But despite ground's great offensive positioning, it does have to deal with a few notable drawbacks. While being resisted by bug and grass isn't too rough, being completely walled by flying is another story. Especially because ground is also walled by a massive pool of alternate flying types, also known as levitate users. Side note, Game Freak burnt out really fast on levitate mons. Up through Gen 4 there were plenty of users, but in Gen 5 they just added Cryogonal, Hydreigon, and the Electros line, and since then it's only been Vikavolt. Weird. Looking at the defensive end, ground is weak to grass, ice, and water, it resists poison and rock, and is immune to electric. Defensively, the ground type has it a bit worse, as resisting these 3 types isn't really worth the trade-off of being weak to grass, ice, and water, all of which are pretty common offensive types. But like I've said with pretty much every type in this series, there's always a few ways to get around your notable weaknesses. Part of the reason these 3 types are so worrisome for ground is because of its base stats. While the physically oriented stats are quite top-notch, there's a massive hole in not only special prowess, but speed, debatably the most important stat, with ground being the slowest type overall. It's bad enough to be slow as dirt, but the extreme lack of special defensive prowess means that ground's 3 weaknesses can have a field day against it, throwing out scalds and energy balls and ice beams, oh my. This lack of special defense is probably the biggest weakness the type has to shore up. Otherwise, our gym battle will look like Giovanni's gym fight in Gen 1, just surf spam until you get the badge. While there are ways to help mitigate this issue, like the Assault Vest, it's typically easier for ground to deal with its threats offensively. Why bother trying to take less damage when you can just deal a ton of damage yourself? In general, ground is one of those types that lines up with how a lot of people handle an in-game playthrough. Click strong move, hopefully live hit, and keep clicking strong move. I don't mean to make the type sound dumb, but when you only have 5 status moves, most of which you never see in competitive play, it's a little hard for the strat to be anything other than. Thankfully, with such a great attack stat and one of the most reliable moves in the entire game at its disposal, it's pretty easy for ground to pull off this offensive strategy, even if it's still slow as dirt. Since we're talking about the team's overall strategy, this is a nice segue into the gym leader themselves. And with our general plan being, the first character that comes to mind is actually Toph from Avatar: The Last Airbender, better known as Melon Lord. In all seriousness, to stick with the franchise we're actually talking about, I like the vibe that characters like Hapu and Rika give off. Unlike fighting, where the importance tends to be on raw physical strength, ground almost falls more in line with strength of mind, or better yet, the importance of a solid foundation. A ground specialist is someone, well, grounded, fairly level-headed, and most of the time, quite mature. Okay, now that I say it out loud, maybe Toph wasn't the best example. Every ground trainer in the franchise is either wise beyond their years, or in Bertha's case, appropriately for her years, and have some of the strongest wills or resolves of any trainer specialty, which in hindsight is pretty ironic considering most ground types just go, forget the trickiness of the dark type or the never-ending list of status buffs that Psychic employs. Today we're dealing with ground go brrr, just like how you should go brrr on the subscribe button. All a brrr, and I would both appreciate it. To get this team started, we're leading off with the Fang Scorpion Pokemon, Gliscor. As the only line to share a type with Landorus, one of the best competitive Pokemon of all time, Gliscor is one of the most consistent and reliable ground types, despite having a glaring weakness to ice. A big reason for this is its stat spread. Solid attack, pretty great speed, and some respectable defenses. Even its HP and special defense are decent enough for it to live in Ice Beam from time to time. Usually a non-stab Ice Beam with a lot of SPDF investment, but hey, it's still something. But of course, Gliscor's biggest claim to fame is its ability Poison Heal. This incredible ability heals a whopping 1/8 of Gliscor's HP each turn, so long as it's poisoned, which is achieved by having it hold a Toxic Orb. And it's easily the better of the two Poison Heal users, as Breloom is a little too frail to make great use of the consistent recovery. Because of Gliscor's solid speed and longevity through Poison Heal, I think it would be the perfect lead to set the team up for success, especially since it'll have the move Spikes. The only really relevant ground status move, Spikes are the original entry hazard, that you can set up to 3 layers of to deal passive damage to grounded Pokemon switching in. While there are several solid Spike users, some of which we have coming up, Gliscor's ability to restore massive chunks of HP with Poison Heal, along with being one of the fastest ground types, makes it quite reliable at setting up all 3 layers of Spikes, outside of a Choice Specs Ice Beam. Once it's done setting up hazards, it can use Earthquake, which we'll be seeing a lot of on this team, and Dual Wing Beat to dish out some early damage for the team. And lastly, Roost will help Gliscor stay healthy as long as possible, giving us an even better chance to set all the spikes up. It may not be as threatening as the Swords Dance Facade set you often see running around, but every Pokemon on the team has a role to fill, and a hazard setting lead just happened to be where Gliscor fits best. Now if you wanted to get really crazy with it, you could swap out Dual Wing Beat for Toxic Spikes, but then you'd be giving any flying type a chance to set up and sweep you on turn 1, so Dual Stab is probably better than Hazard Aggression. Ooh, maybe instead we give it Stealth Rock so it'll deal damage to flying. No, wait, that wouldn't work either. Back to the drawing board. While our next team member doesn't provide much in way of the type chart, it is one of the most ground types to ever ground type, and that's the Draft Horse Pokemon, Mudsdale. My boy here is an absolute freaking unit. At 8'2", weighing wait, I can do this better.
In this corner, coming in at 8 foot 2 inches tall, weighing over 2,000 pounds, we have the haughty horse hero, the earthbound equestrian, always the Clydesdale, never the Clyde, Mudsdale.
One look at Mudsdale's stats tells you what you need to know. He may not be speedy, but he is beefy and he is strong. Now that's what I call horsepower. And we can play into both of those strengths by having it hold the Assault Vest, which makes it even better at standing up to special hits than it already was, while also letting us fully capitalize on its offense. Not to mention, it's also the OG user of the ability Stamina, which increases defense by 1 stage every time it's damaged by a move. With this combination, Mudsdale simply functions as a tank, an unstoppable force of a horse on course to show no remorse. Its first move is going to be Earthquake.
Wow, who would have seen that coming?
Second is Stone Edge, giving us a solid move for the bug and flying types not hit by ground, and the ice types that are super effective against us, which could also be hit by our third move, Body Press, which will only get stronger the more our defense is boosted from stamina. And lastly, Heavy Slam is our best final move for coverage, and makes great use of our over 2,000 pounds of horse strength. Well, that was a sentence of all time. It's a pretty standard set for Mudsdale, but it's standard for a reason. A majority of Pokemon are hit for super effective damage with this moveset, and not a single one can resist this array of attacks. It still is really slow, so Mudsdale may not carry the team to victory, but it is very reliable, and can easily dish out some powerful hits before going down. Talk about a workhorse. Mudsdale represents the ground type incredibly well, both through stats and strategy, and its powerful offensive presence coupled with its ability to tank a few hits will be very valued on this team. You might even say it's prized. You know, like a horse. Next up, we have another more defensive team member alongside Gliscor, being the Sea Slug Pokemon, Gastrodon. First and foremost, the question all of you are likely wondering, West Sea or East Sea? And look, this may be controversial, but I strongly believe that this team, the ground team, should have the West Sea variant. Do I like the East Sea design better? Yes. But damn it, representation is important, and West Sea not only looks the part, but it needs more love at that. Hashtag West Sea Best Sea. Anyways, slug aesthetics aside, one of Gastrodon's greatest traits is its typing of water and ground, which gives it a sole weakness in grass, albeit a 4x weakness. Thankfully, between Gliscor being part flying, Mudsdale's overall defensive prowess, and a couple of upcoming team members' types, Gastrodon's grass weakness isn't too annoying to manage, especially because it can sometimes live a grass type move anyways, thanks to its naturally high HP stat. Nothing else really stands out in stats, but Gastrodon is one of those mons that's here more for utility than it is raw stats, which leads me to its ability, Storm Drain, which both gives it a water immunity and a +1 special attack boost when it's hit by a water move. This immunity is incredibly helpful considering water is the most common type in the game, and is much more helpful than a mon like Toedscruel that would simply take neutral damage from water, and also give us another 4x ice weakness. And with Gastrodon's respectable 92 special attack, after a Storm Drain boost, it can launch off powerful Scalds, which have a 30% chance to burn the target, Earth Powers, our only special ground move on the whole team, and Ice Beams to hit flying and grass types. Only if we live a hit from a grass type first. As for the last move, since Gastrodon is one of the bulkier team members, I think Recover is essential for helping it fulfill that more defensive role, as is the item Leftovers. Although, giving it a Rindo Berry to reduce damage from a super effective grass move would be a cheeky little tech. And y'all know how much I love my cheeky little tech. While there are a few other ground-water types, Gastrodon's solid all-around bulk, coupled with Storm Drain to capitalize on one of the type's weaknesses, is what puts it on this team ahead of a more passive member like Quagsire, or a frailer member like Whiscash. Sorry y'all, no dragon dancing fish today. With the first half of our team having great bulk, our next three are going to focus much more on the ground type's impressive offense, which is why our next team member is the subterranean Pokemon, Excadrill. Most people would agree that Sand Rush is the scariest variant of Excadrill, but since the Rock team took on Sand, we'll be utilizing an Excadrill with Mold Breaker. It may not be as immediately terrifying as the Sand Demon, but Mold Breaker can be used for a lot of specific situations, such as bypassing Levitate. And with Excadrill sporting the best attack on our entire team, we're going to maximize its damage potential with the item Choice Band. I'm very aware that Swords Dance alongside Rapid Spin is an amazing way for Excadrill to set up and sweep, but with an upcoming team member running a similar set, I thought it would be best to use Excadrill as a hardcore wall breaker. And what better way to do that than with our first move, holding for suspense because I know you'll all be shocked when you find out it's Earthquake.
Wow!
Second is Iron Head for dual stab, which works well against the three types that don't mind Earthquake, as do the next two attacks, being Rock Slide, RIP no Stone Edge, but at least our accuracy is better, and X Scissor, giving us a super effective move for grass types. With this combination of coverage, Excadrill hits over 2/3 of Pokemon for super effective damage. But even a neutral hit coming off a banded Excadrill will be devastating for a majority of Pokemon, unless their name is Skarmory or Corviknight. Another big positive for Excadrill is its typing of Ground and Steel, helping to cover the Ice and Grass weakness. Again, Swords Dance and Rapid Spin on Excadrill would be a great alternate strategy, but instead of losing out on extra coverage and the immediate damage boost from Choice Band, I'd rather this mole hit like a truck out the gate, leaving room for our last two team members to clean up. With that all said, if you did want to take advantage of Sand Rush Excadrill, you should definitely use this honorable mention alongside it, Hippowdon. Another beefy boy that accurately represents the type like Mudsdale, Hippowdon is the best ground type sand setter, partially because it's the only ground type sand setter. Unless we count Sand Spit on Sandaconda, but that isn't nearly as reliable. Outside of its ability to set up Excadrill, Hippowdon has plenty of natural bulk to tank some hits, and a solid base 112 attack to dish out some big damage, with moves like Earthquake, duh, Stone Edge for flying types, Slack Off to keep itself healthy, and finally, Curse for setup. This big ol' hippo paired with Excadrill would make for a terrifying combo, and while I debated it for quite some time, I'd rather not throw partial sand on this team just for the sake of using Amon's most infamous set. But that all said, Hippowdon is definitely worthy of an honorable mention, whether it's there to help Excadrill or not, as a beefy curse user that the opponent would struggle to take out. But instead of running a bulky sand hippo, our next team member is sticking with offense just like Excadrill, and that's the intimidation Pokemon, Krookodile. One of my personal favorite ground types, Krookodile's greatest strength lies in its versatility. It's powerful enough and fast enough to be an offensive threat, but it also has enough natural bulk to find itself in a defensive role from time to time, especially since it has the ability Intimidate. But instead of running this bulkier Croc, or trying to get insanely lucky with Anger Point, we're going to run the tried and true Choice Scarf Moxie Krookodile. I know this makes 2 choiced Pokemon in a row, but if the whole strategy of the ground type is to click a button and deal damage, why not run a choiced item? And this is even more important on Krookodile than it is on Excadrill. With the chip damage from our previous Pokemon, alongside Spike's damage if Gliscor did its job right, Choice Scarf helping us outspeed a majority of Pokemon, and Moxie boosting our attack with every KO, Krookodile can easily finish the match from there. To do so, it'll have Dig, just kidding, obviously it's going to be Earthquake, followed by Darkest Lariat, as I'd rather run it over Knockoff for consistency, Close Combat as it's one of our most reliable coverage moves, and finally, Gunk Shot to deal with grass types and fairy types. While I think this is the best combination of moves for our Krookodile to run, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention how many amazing coverage and status moves it gets otherwise, like Aqua Tail, Fire Fang, Stone Edge, Outrage, Bulk Up, Taunt. I wasn't kidding when I was praising its versatility. And again, the Scarf Moxie set is really scary for a late game team member to have, especially one that can spam a strong stab move like Darkest Lariat, since it isn't likely to be resisted by the opponent's team. Kind of funny how a literal Crook is one of the most reliable Pokemon on this team. And for no particular reason, shout out to Sandile. And now we're on to the ace. I struggled for a bit to think of who would best fill this role, and while something like Mudsdale would have been great for representation, in terms of making a powerful ground type team, this pick is worth straying a little bit from that model. Here we have the Mach Pokemon, Garchomp. Am I a bit silly for putting the Mach Pokemon on the slowest monotype team?
Yes I am.
Am I even sillier for giving it Scale Shot to make it even faster?
Yes I
Well, I don't care, because Garchomp is one of the best competitive pseudo-legendaries ever created, and it can fit well on this team, so you can bet damn well it's going on this team. In all seriousness, Garchomp's pseudo-legendary status puts it in a league above many other Pokemon, as the combo of 130 attack and 102 speed speaks for itself, let alone with the fantastic all-around bulk that comes from a 600 base stat total. While Garchomp typically finds itself in a defensive role setting Stealth Rock and Spikes, all the while dealing passive damage with its Rough Skin ability and Rocky Helmet in hand, on a team like this, it would be a bit wild to use it as anything other than the ace. I know Cynthia approves at least. Thankfully, Garchomp can fulfill the ace role really well, in large part thanks to Scale Shot. A multi-hit Dragon-type move that increases the user's speed and lowers their defense, Scale Shot can boost Garchomp's speed to incredible levels so it's that much more likely to sweep the foe's team, while also being a powerful stab move to boot. As for Dual Stab, do I even need to say it? Third would be Iron Head, as it gives us a move for the ice types we're quad weak to, the fairy types that wall Scale Shot, plus, who doesn't love a good 30% chance to flinch? The answer to that's anyone on the receiving end. Lastly, as any great sweeper ace Pokemon should have, Swords Dance can give Garchomp the ability to basically one-shot anything. Again, maybe outside of Skarmory or Corviknight. For the ability, we're sticking with Rough Skin since Sandveil is irrelevant, and as for an item, Loaded Dice turns Scale Shot into a more reliable move, guaranteeing it hits at least 4 times. Again, I know this may not be the most representative final ground type, but considering that a big goal of this series is to build a diverse and well-balanced team, I think we've done that quite well. But those are just my thoughts. Maybe you think we should trade away speed for some slower offense, or maybe you think it's perfect as is. Whatever your take, be sure to let me know in the comments below. Just don't hit me with any tectonic rage about my choices, okay? Anyways, thanks again for watching. Be sure to check out the Broken Pokemon submission form in the description, and as thanks for making it to the end of the video, here's a picture of my dog. Talk to y'all soon.